Hello my friends, today we are going to the eastern US state of North Carolina to see how farming and livestock work here. From majestic mountains to coastal plains, North Carolina's agriculture can be described in one word: diverse. Farming and agriculture has always been an important part of North Carolina's economy throughout the state's history. In recent years, North Carolina's agriculture industry has contributed between $77 and $83 billion to the state's economy. According to the USDA statistics, as of mid-2022, there are approximately 47,200 active farms in North Carolina, and this number is about 6,300 farms less than in 2017. Today, the average farm size in North Carolina is about 181 acres, and the state's total farmland is 8.4 million acres, or about 27% of the state's total area. In recent years, operations on farms in North Carolina have been mainly pig, turkey, broiler, sweet potato, cucumber, bell pepper, and tobacco farming. In addition, salmon fishing is also a quite famous profession in this eastern state. This is a deer farm in Ashe County, in the northwest of North Carolina. There are about 130 deer raised for the purpose of meat and deer velvet. The end of April to June each year is usually the breeding time for the deer raised on this farm, and on average a female deer usually gives birth to 2 to 3 young. Newborn stags weigh an average of 6 to 8 pounds. In the wild, they are considered the favorite prey of predators such as coyotes, brown bears, and wildcats. After about 2 weeks of living on the farm, the young deer will go with their mother to the grasslands and forest next to the farm to feed and play. According to statistics from the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, there are about 37 active deer farms in the state, and the number of deer raised on these farms is about 5,700. The number of deer raised in North Carolina is very small when compared to the number of deer in the wild and in the state's sanctuaries. It is estimated that in North Carolina, there is about 1.1 million deer living in the wild and protected areas. Unlike deer that live in the wild, most deer raised on a farm in North Carolina are vaccinated at an early age to control certain diseases that can be transmitted to humans, such as Q fever or tuberculosis. This is another deer farm in Mecklenburg County in western North Carolina. There are about 120 deer living here, including about 23 male deer. In the late afternoon, this ranch owner will use hay and some nuts to feed his deer herd. According to estimates by the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, Mecklenburg is the county with the largest deer population in the state, with about 31,000. This population includes both wild and farm-raised deer. This is a rabbit farm in Caswell County, north central North Carolina. There are about 200 rabbits raised in the farm of free range, and they can freely run and dig in the fenced area. Every day, the owner of this ranch will use some nuts and peanuts or sweet corn to feed hundreds of rabbits, and most of the rabbits on this farm are raised for the purpose of harvesting meat. Currently, there are about 40 rabbit farms in operation in North Carolina, and the number of rabbits raised on the free range is only a small number. This is another rabbit farm in North Carolina, where hundreds of rabbits are kept in cages and they hardly see the sun in their entire lives. After reaching a weight of around 10 pounds, hundreds of rabbits at this farm will be shipped to rabbit meat processing plants. With more than 20,000 rabbit meat producers across the country, each year the United States consumes about 8.3 million pounds of rabbit meat. In the United States, approximately 890,000 rabbits are slaughtered each year. Of these, about 112,000 were slaughtered in Pennsylvania. Goodbye Livestock Farms. We will now go to a Christmas tree farm in Henderson County, North Carolina, to see how the process of cultivating and harvesting thousands of Christmas trees here takes place. Early spring is often the time when thousands of Christmas trees are moved from nurseries to farms to start a new life. Currently, in North Carolina, there are about 850 Christmas tree growers on an estimated 41,000 acres. And this is also the state with the second largest number of Christmas trees in the country, with about 4 million trees. Leading the list is Oregon with 4.8 million trees. Christmas tree planting time usually lasts from 4 to 10 years, depending on the cultivator. In North Carolina, the Fraser fir is the most commonly grown Christmas tree, accounting for 90% of the state's Christmas tree production. It usually takes about 7 years to become eligible for the harvest. This is what happens at the Christmas tree farm when the harvest season begins. Here, thousands of Christmas trees will be cut and delivered to the gathering place. Currently, in the United States, there are about 15,000 Christmas tree farms, with an area of around 295,000 acres of land use. In recent years, the output of Christmas trees harvested across the country has always fluctuated between 21 and 25 million trees per year. After harvesting, thousands of Christmas trees will be transported to the gathering place by truck. Some farms will actually use helicopters to transport trees. Each year, the Christmas tree industry in the United States creates about 100,000 jobs, and the revenue from the sale of Christmas trees is about $383 million. When it comes to North Carolina agriculture, we certainly cannot ignore the large-scale sweet potato farms in this state. According to statistics, in 2021, in North Carolina, about 46,000 acres of farmland is used to grow sweet potatoes, and the annual production of sweet potatoes in the state is about 771,000 tonnes, accounting for 43% of sweet potato production in the country. Each year, in August to October, is the time when thousands of migrant workers flock to sweet potato farms in Northern Carolina to harvest, and the average salary that they receive is at about $11 per hour. Here is the process of harvesting at another sweet potato farm in North Carolina. Here, millions of sweet potatoes will be harvested by this modern machine instead of migrant workers. The sweet potatoes harvested here will be stored in wooden crates before being transported to the packing factory. And this is what happens at a sweet potato packing plant. Here, millions of sweet potatoes will be washed and dried before packing. In addition to sweet potatoes, North Carolina is also the leading state in the country in terms of tobacco production. According to statistics, in 2021, tobacco production in North Carolina is about 184 million pounds, accounting for 48% of tobacco production in the country. Ranking second in this list is Kentucky with 107 million pounds, accounting for 27% of output production nationwide. Hello my friends, today we are going to the large-scale cattle farms in Australia to see how the process of raising millions of cattle here happens. According to statistics, at the beginning of 2022, in Australia there are about 19,000 beef cattle farms and about 4,500 farms producing a mixture of beef and sheep. The most popular breeds of cattle raised in Australia can be mentioned as Brahman, Hereford, Angus, or Murray Grey. Currently, the majority of cattle ranches in Australia are concentrated in states such as Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and Western Australia. The average area of a cattle farm in this country is about 32,000 acres. Cattle were brought to Australia by the first British settlers in 1788. Herds grew slowly during the early years of settlement. By the 1800s, however, Australian farmers had taken advantage of the vast land and moved their herds to grazing areas further inland, thereby increasing herd numbers. In recent years, the number of calves born in Australia has fluctuated between 9.5 and 9.8 million a year, and 45% of them are born in Queensland. Most calves will live with their mothers on the farm for about 3 months before weaning. For cows that do not have the necessary amount of milk, the calves will be separated from their mothers earlier, and they will be fed milk provided by the breeders. This is a cattle farm in the state of New South Wales, where about 230 3-month-old calves are being cared for. Every day, the workers at this farm will use hay to feed the calves. Currently, the average size of a herd of cattle in southern Australia is about 430 heads, and in the north, the average herd size is around 1,600 heads. After about 4 months, the calves will be regularly grazed in the pastures. However, at this stage, they will not be moved too far from the farm like other adult cattle, because most of the food they use every day is still provided by the breeders. Every day, the mature cattle will be herded to the large pastures to feed, and to be able to move the livestock stably, the cattle breeders will need the help of cattle dogs. For a herd of about 500 cattle, they can travel about 15 miles a day to reach the new pastures. Currently, the total area of land used for grazing in Australia is approximately 831 million acres, which also includes areas used for grazing goats and sheep. After a long journey, herds will need to be fed before moving on to new pastures. At this time, dry grass and straw will be used to refuel for the next journey. The length of time a herd of cattle will feed on one pasture before moving to another will depend on a number of fundamental factors, such as the number of cattle in the herd, the size of the pasture, and the resiliency of the pasture. This is a herd in Queensland with about 350 heads. Every late afternoon, hundreds of cattle will gather at this small lake area to drink water. On average, an adult cattle needs to drink about 10 to 15 gallons of water per day, and afternoons are usually the time when their bodies need to be rehydrated. Currently, there are about 11,000 beef cattle farms in Queensland, with about 10.7 million heads, and annual beef production in the state is about 1.3 million tonnes. In Australia, moving a herd of cattle from a few dozen to a few hundred always requires the help of cattle dogs. Cattle dogs and sheep dogs are very intelligent animals and loyal to their owners. It is estimated that currently there are about 273,000 dogs working on animal farms in Australia, and about 65% of them are working on cattle farms. Training a cattle dog to master the skill and absolutely obey the owner is something that not all cattle owners can do. As a result, many ranchers buy pre-trained dogs to work on their farms. This is the process of moving a large herd in Victoria. Here, hundreds of cattle will be gathered in a fenced area before they are transferred to beef factories or sold to other farms. Gathering a herd of up to 100 cattle is not an easy thing for herders. This is a much harder job than moving livestock from one pasture to another. These helicopters will be used to prevent any cows from escaping. In 2022, the number of cattle in Australia is 24.7 million heads, and this number includes both dairy and beef cattle. In addition to Queensland, New South Wales is also one of the states with the largest number of cattle in the country, with 4.4 million heads. Behind these two states is Victoria with 3.6 million heads. Here's what's going on inside a beef factory in Australia. Each year, about 8.3 million cows are slaughtered in Australia, and annual beef production in the country ranges from 2.3 to 2.7 million tonnes. Currently, up to 70% of beef production in Australia is exported to other countries, and the remaining 30% is consumed domestically. Because the majority of cattle in Australia are raised on grazing, the quality of beef in Australia is always highly appreciated by consumers all around the world.